Amid a spike in unknown objects being taken down across North America, one expert says that this is a sign that our defenses are working well. The deputy director for the Center for Defense and Security Studies says it's possible that the recent spat of unknown objects entering and being shot down from North America's skies are testing NORAD's capabilities. James Ferguson of the University of Manitoba says if that's the case, then the tests have failed. He says that since the objects have been taken down, quote, you cannot penetrate North American airspace without repercussions. Still, both the Canadian and American governments have said little about who may be behind the incursions. With us now to discuss unknown objects and North American security is Dr. Rob Huebert, a defense expert and associate professor at the University of Calgary. Dr. Huebert, welcome back to Forum Daily.
It's always my pleasure.
Always great to have you, Dr. Huebert. So a lot happening in the skies this month. In fact, in just the past 10 days, we've seen 4 aerial objects being shot down over Canada and the U.S. So what sort of information do we have on these flying objects?
Well, we have that the militaries are taking it so serious, as my friend Jim Ferguson said in your opening statements. We are seeing that NORAD is able to track and shoot down these particular events, and so the information beyond that is pretty sketchy. I mean, we're waiting to see whether or not we're able to cover anything in the minus 32 of the Yukon shooting. And of course, the other one being down in the Huron is also problematic. And so at this point, we've got suspicions about who's doing it. And that's on the basis of the fact that the weather balloon was Chinese. But we're still waiting to see any form of official notification about whether or not it is somebody just being silly with these things, which isn't really that probable, or if it's the Russian or the Chinese, which seems to be the American impressions at this point.
And as you say, the information is quite sparse, as sketchy as you say. So, if we're looking at this information, other than the Chinese balloon identified on February 4th, they're being described as cylindrical or octagonal objects. The most recent object flying over Lake Huron described as octagonal. So, what could these objects be? Are they other weather balloons? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it sounds, I mean, we're not seeing any indications that they are in fact balloons, so they could possibly be sort of a modernized version of the old sort of airships. And so is that what we're seeing? I have to wait and see whether or not they are self-sustained, if they're balloons, or what in terms of for the recovery, because the pictures that have been released aren't clear. We're not even certain, or at least publicly, there hasn't been any notification that the whatever was shot down over Lake Huron is the same thing as what was shot down over the Yukon or in the other location. So in other words, we're not quite clear. And let's be clear. Let's be honest on one other point. We're not. They're not releasing any information if there's any that have been missed. In other words, we're getting information being released by the authorities on the ones that have been tracked and the ones that have been shot down. And of course, so it leads a skeptic to ask the question: are there some that are being missed as they go through North American airspace?
And something to add to that, the U.S. has recently learned of a fleet of Chinese spy balloons. So, what do we know about this and its connection to the 4 objects that were downed over the past few days?
Well, we know starting around 2019, the Americans became very concerned about what initially was identified as UFOs. I mean, they've changed the terminology a little bit, so everyone's not thinking X Files and Little Green Men in this capacity. But there is has been some American documentation relatively recently coming down in that they have seen a fairly significant increase, usually somewhere in the numbers of about 300 of their service personnel pointing out the identification of unidentified flying objects. And these have been both in terms of sight, in terms of radar signature, and others. So the Americans are concerned. They're seeing an increase. And whether or not these 4 or 5 entities that are now coming into our aerospace, if they represent the same of these fleets that have been coming in, or if this is something entirely different. And that's something, of course, we simply don't know publicly at this point.
All right, Dr. Huber, looks like we've got a quick 30 seconds left here, but what are you keeping your eyes on as things develop in this situation?
Well, who's doing this and why are they doing it? Is it an attempt to test our capabilities? Are they not only doing the various electronics that they'll see, but are they also watching what we do in terms of determination? But it's chilling if you think that this is being orchestrated by someone who has spent a fairly significant amount of money taking risks with this. Why do they need this information right now? Is this something are the Chinese thinking about perhaps asserting action in Taiwan? Are the Russians going to be increasing their activity in Ukraine? I mean, once again, we don't, it's all speculation, but somebody has put a lot of effort into this, and so the question is, okay, what are you planning to do with that information?
Clearly, a lot of questions that need to be answered. Dr. Huebert, thank you again for your time today.
Always my pleasure, Nima.